Well, Vince, good to see you again. Honestly, I just do these lives really just to catch up with you guys and see how we're doing. So we'll just do like normal coffee shop talk. I know the year isn't over, but it almost is. You know, we got another week or so left. And obviously, like a lot of people are going to start their New Year's resolutions. And for most people, a top priority is to, you know, in one way or another, just be more mentally and physically healthy, you know? But oftentimes, I see a lot of cyclical patterns of people approaching it in certain ways, and they do at times see like short-term results, and they lose their weight, or they feel better for a little bit, or they get rid of their gut issues or whatever. And then, you know, by the time March or definitely June rolls around, they're back to like literally exactly where they've started. And I want to interview you because at least for yourself, you figured out how to create lasting change. As I mentioned many times in this group, especially with weight loss, like 90% of people that end up losing any amount of weight regain it within a 3 to 4 year period, plus an extra like 5 pounds just for the hell of it, for no reason whatsoever, you know? And then they kind of start the patterns again. They lose the weight, they gain the weight, they lose the weight, they gain the weight. And that's for people that actually do end up losing weight, but there are many more people that just don't lose weight to begin with. And they get discouraged and they go down that path of decline. So I'm going to let you take over, and then I'll try to shoot some good questions back and forth here and there. But what would you say for people that are going to start embarking on a wellness or health journey in the new year, and kind of your input, and maybe give some background to your journey as well? So that way people that don't know you at least have some general idea of what you've gone through.
Okay. Well, I responded to the first thing you mentioned, which was regarding like what one's goals are, but also where one is at in their mental and say physical wellness. Because for my so I'm a former client of Eugene's, and when I was doing my due diligence to at least give myself assurance that my money was going to be well spent, I checked out a lot of his Instagram videos before I even contacted him. And most of what I was hearing in those videos had practically very little to do with actual like physical workouts or any sort of recommendations regarding the physicality of it. But what I was hearing was a focus on diet, a focus on living to one's core beliefs, and proper sleep, and proper sort of like stress. And, you know, stress comes upon us when we're dealing with things in our lives that perhaps we're not the best suited for. So those are all things that really like called out in my mind as things that were lacking in what I was doing before working with Eugene. And there were also things that I was really eager and ready to tackle like independently. Like it was just serendipitous, I think, that I ran across that I was recommended to Eugene, and I saw what Eugene was saying. So I felt like all the stars were aligned for me at that moment, which was that I knew my diet was not working for me, even though I was like kind of doing like keto-ish or low carb-ish, but the way I was approaching that was just completely wrong, and it wasn't working for me. And I was also doing like Orange Theory. I was doing a occasional like in-person physical trainer, and still I was hovering around 220. I couldn't get like below 220 for any sustained amount of time. So I think it was critical, like the new lifestyle factors that Eugene helped me adopt were what really got me under that like 220 range that I was at, and down to 175 was my minimum, and that was last year at the end of the year before I did the bulking part with you. So right now I'm at like 195. And I can go into why that has happened, but that actually kind of connects to the last thing that you said, which was, you know, the weight loss it's sustainable, but you need to have you need to have the things that were contributing to fat loss as a symptom. And when those things get out of whack, then the fat loss comes back, or the fat gain comes back. And like that's a little bit of what I've been experiencing in the second half of this year. I can kind of go into like my depression that I've gotten myself into this year. Um, so that's just to address what you had just introduced with. Now, of course, I can go into into when I was 400 pounds and the things that led into that. But just let me know if you have any questions that you want me to address more specifically.
No, take this any direction
Okay.
you your like story and what you've been up to. So for you guys that don't know, it's been quite a while since I've trained with Vince. So I'm like catching up with him. I haven't even heard from him. Uh, but go and like he mentioned, he was 400 pounds at one point. So maybe you can kind of touch on that and kind of go from there for people that don't know your story from that vantage point.
Okay. So like right now, I'm 48 years old. But around the year 2000, 2001, when I was like around 25, I had the great idea of getting getting started with using methamphetamines. Um, at that time in my life, I was extremely successful for my age. I had a career that was actually going for about 5 years. I started when I was 20, I mean, even before then. But the job that I had at that moment, I was like a self-taught computer programmer. I was traveling all around the world for this company. I was kind of a rogue IT department of one, which their official IT department absolutely hated. But I had like this really incredible skill. So the business side of the business was like just do what you could do because like the IT department is too bureaucratized. But so I would travel. I lived overseas. So by the time I was like 25 or so, I had like a condo in downtown Chicago. I wasn't really drinking or doing any drugs at all. Um, but apparently something was lacking in my life, and I started to do methamphetamine. And even then, I was like normal weight, well, 180, 170. Um, I had the propensity of gaining weight if I was not physically active, especially back then. Um, I wasn't like my weight was okay when I started doing drugs. But within a few years of the drug addiction, I became arrested. And the arrest and the conviction of drug related crimes really like devastated me, and I was like just basically shattered, and I started to eat. And after the court stuff was over and I wasn't like sentenced to any jail time, um, but I was on probation. I went back to using drugs, but this time though I was completely distrustful of anyone in my so-called friend circle. So I was like isolating. I was completely probably distressed or depressed and like traumatized from this whole ordeal. So anyway, I would stay up for 4 days in a row. But by that point of my drug usage, I've been using it for so many years that the appetite suppressant part of meth like was already long gone. So I would just be extremely like hungry at the end of the day just from being awake for so long. And so I was not eating right. I would drink at least 2 to 4 liters of pop every day, and then around midnight or so, I would order these like gigantic breaded steak sandwiches. And so, like within 5 years, I went from like 180 to 400 pounds. Like it was an extremely rapid weight gain, and I wouldn't even look at myself in the mirror. I was wearing 5XLT shirts, and my stomach would still like hang out at the bottom of the shirt. I just didn't have any like concern for myself, and people would look at me and just be like, "What the hell happened to you? Like you, like, like, yeah, you definitely do not care about yourself." And I really didn't. And being on drugs for so long, and um, having a job the whole time, it was just constant series of humiliating myself to the point where like nothing that there was like no more esteem that a humiliation could like chip off from. Like I felt like I was at minimum amount of ability to be humiliated because I just had been humiliated so many times. So I was just like I just didn't care, and people around me were like, "You're gonna die!" Like, and I could barely walk at some point. like the I don't know what was going on with my legs or my nerves, but walking for a block or so would just create like extremely like burning sensation in my legs or my hips, and it was getting like I felt like I was kind of on the road to being like immobilized, and I think like the weight gain was almost like exponential because like it was just coming on quicker and quicker and quicker, and and this is like the end of like 18 years of drugs. So I'm like fast forwarding to near the end of the drugs. So I'm now like 40 years old, and I was watching a little bit of like My 600-Pound Life, that TV show.
Mhm.
And there's always like an enabler, and there's always like someone to take care of these people. But that's not the way I was living. Like I knew that like I would not have an enabler if I were to become like immobilized, and that well anyway I didn't want to be immobilized. I'm single, so I don't have like anyone to take care of me, nor like a neck condition when I expect that to happen. So people were urging me to get weight loss surgery. They most of them were not really clued in or did not communicate to me about the drug side of things. So after a while, I got myself convinced to do the weight loss surgery. And so so this is like 2015. I had a vertical sleeve gastrectomy. Oh, the reason why I resorted to the surgery was that I knew in my mind, I was like, to lose this much weight is going to take so long, and I really don't sustain things very well, and I'm on drugs, and I'm not making good decisions. I just felt like the weight loss surgery was the only way I could really reverse course in a very effective way. That would like basically stop I think my rapid advance toward really nasty diseases or disabilities. So I was like, fine, I'm going to do the surgery. So it was at Northwestern Hospital in Chicago, and they put you on a CPAP machine so to monitor my sleep before the surgery. So I kind of stopped drugs. I did stop drugs for like 8 months before the surgery. And I had the sense in my mind to not do drugs like directly after the surgery. Yeah, because they took out the bulk of my stomach laparoscopically. So it was like a major like inside my body like trauma. They're basically scissoring out my stomach and pulling it out of my body and then stapling it together. So I had the good sense to allow my body to heal for about a year. And I lost 200 pounds in a year. Like I got down to about like almost like 210 within a year. At the beginning, it was like 25 pounds a week. It was awesome. But the one thing that they told me in the hospital was like, if you don't take this seriously when on the other side of the surgery, you'll a person can gain it right back very easily if they don't change their eating, for the rest of their lives. And that's something that I did take heed of. And really to this moment, I haven't really like slipped too poorly into like, I guess, extremely weight gaining type of food eating. So I feel fortunate about that. But after I lost 200 pounds, I started doing drugs again. And this time I was like using meth like intravenously. And I think I did get down to 165 during the few years after the surgery from the drugs. But again, after the initial weight loss, then I was eating really bad. So it just kind of was creeping its way back to the 200s. But at that point, I was around 40, 41 years old, and 18 years of meth usage is really, 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 it takes away. Well, one, I mean, I don't know how much you need to go into this part of it, but it, it's not promoting any sort of positive growth in your life. And after 18 years of doing it and being with the people that I was with, and it was just, I finally like internalized to myself that this was a situation where nothing was ever going to change. I would just continuously be putting myself into situations where I would be around people that were dangerous to me. And through my own participation, being involved with like harm to other people. And, there were moments where I would think to myself, like, how is it that I've become this, or how is it that I've accepted these crazy things that are going on around me as normal? Because, that's what I was doing. It was like, I knew some people that I was associating with harmed other people, and it was like, oh well, that's just what this is just what my associates do, because none of us are in their right minds. Instead of like saying like this is extremely like wrong and immoral and like you should have no part of it, but I was on drugs too. So anyhow, toward the end of all my drugs, I ended up back in my parents' house. Actually, this is where I am right now. I'm at my parents' house for Christmas, and this was my bedroom, where I used drugs probably for the last time. So that's kind of interesting. So they confronted me and gave me an ultimatum that I was either going to get treatment or I was going to be kicked out of the house, and I could not rely on them for anything. So I decided to get treatment, and after I got out of the detox hospital, I put myself into a sober living house for a year. And I did have goals when I decided to get clean. So, one of them, of course, was to get clean off drugs. Another one was to get back to work. I had to tell you, after 18 years of meth, my brain was just so hobbled and addled. But also in the back of my mind was also like a fitness goal, because I have always struggled with being healthy in the definition, like the literal definition of healthy. And so I kind of, in my own mind, I'm like, well, you need to get off drugs first. You need to get a job first. You need to move out of the sober living house first. And then once like you accomplish those goals, then you could probably have the mental space in order to go into the fitness goals. And that's actually what ended up happening. That was my path. So I got off drugs. Luckily, I don't want to do drugs. The drug and the recovery process was actually extremely humbling. And I went to I do go to 12-step meetings, and the 12-step, the 12-step program, it offers a lot of opportunity for like introspection and self-reflection and evaluating what my like goals in life are. And it does foster like more mindfulness, I think, than I would ever have been exposed to if I actually did not have my addiction.
Mhm.
So, those are all like positives of this whole ordeal was, knowing, I guess, what has kept me away from drugs, and also what gives me that, they call it a spiritual program. I'm not going to go into that part of it, but it's a program for just like reawakening yourself or reconnecting to people and helping other people as well. Because a big part of it is, when you go into these meetings or whatnot, you are meeting people who walked this road before you. And the idea is people that are coming after me see me walk the road and they get inspired too. And that's something that I think is great. And I participate in those things to this day exactly for that reason. So like just around that whole culture of just thinking about like what I'm doing helping my health, or is it taking me away from my goals? These are all things that Eugene has talked about in a lot of his Instagram videos, in a lot of these live videos. And even when I was interviewing with him, or I don't know what the word is, when I was interested in becoming his client, I felt there was like this great synergy between his approach to a person's wellness as well as like the practical things I was doing at 12-step. And I have to say that it really has helped me adapt to what Eugene's suggestions were for getting the most advantage from what his program is or whatnot. And I became a client of Eugene's in, like, I think it was July of last year. And I mean, I was so disciplined and so eager because everything that he said excited me because everything that he said were things that I had suspected I did not have the right education on. And that those were the things that were lacking in my progress because I had been working out. I had been like eating low carb and all that, and I thought that was like, if you avoid sugar, you won't gain weight. And maybe that's true, maybe that's not true. But I do know that if you're not eating the right foods, the weight that you do have is there to, I guess, protect your body against the toxicities of the poor food choices that I was making. So, maybe the foods I was eating was sort of maintaining me at a point. Um, so, there was that, but it wasn't allowing me to get past that stage. And so Eugene's suggestions on diet and food choices, sleep, um, setting myself up in a life that's not creating a lot of stress. That's something I haven't totally solved yet, and that's what leads to what happened after I stopped working with Eugene. But I started working with Eugene in July of last year, and I was 220 pounds, and I don't know if we did two. No, we did 1 3 month of fat loss program, so that was like July through October. And I got down to my goal weight. I think the goal weight was 180. So I went from like 220 to 180. And I was eating more calories than I was before, eating all day long. And I had weight loss surgery, so I don't have the volume in my stomach to eat basically any more than he was actually suggesting that I eat. So if anything, I might have been under eating a little bit, but I was making me full. But yeah, I diligently stuck to the food. I did have a stable and routine sleep schedule. I did make time out of my day to work out every single day. I rarely missed any workouts. And so, yeah, I lost like 30, almost 40 pounds in 3 months. And it, it took a lot of discipline, I would say, but I was really eager to do it, and the results were almost like instant. Yeah, I mean, I do have my weight logs, and I have a little chart of it, and like if you just visualize like a line chart, line chart, you could see like I'm gaining weight, and then working with Eugene, and it was like a downhill slope, like you would like fall off of and break your legs if it was like a real slope.
Why not? The legs part.
Yeah. Uh, yeah.
Well, you mentioned this is one that a lot of people struggle with. You mentioned just having trouble managing your micro and macro stresses, because that is the case in the world today. It's like a high-paced world, especially if you're living in the city and working in tech, especially I feel in tech and engineering or any kind of traditional lines of work, like legal work, engineering, business work, et cetera, et cetera. Because it's obviously like very saturated fields, but then it's also like high demand fields, et cetera, et cetera. And that is what a lot of people struggle with, because unfortunately, I mean, it's kind of tough to say this directly, but just the world doesn't reward you for putting your mental and physical health first. You know what I mean? They kind of reward you for the mentality of like, if you're not dying for your job, you're not doing your job, basically, And I even have, I'm not going to mention the car company, but one of my friends that's gotten a job at a popular car company in their plant, and basically they're working like 5 12-hour shifts. And get this, like every other month they switch their sleeping schedule too. So one month you're on the day shift, and then the next month you're on the night shift. And it's like a lot of times it's like, I just wonder who's in charge of that schedule. I already know the person is a complete mess themselves. Because like I always say, like sick people can't make healthy decisions, or they wouldn't be sick themselves. And a person that makes that kind of schedule and has their employees follow that type of schedule in that plant, for example, for sure has zero understanding of human physiology or mental health, or even how the central nervous system works, or they wouldn't be creating schedules like that. But that is a very common problem in today's work environment, you know, because you have leadership that's not health conscious themselves, that's oftentimes also completely lost in many aspects of their life, also leading people with that same psychology and belief system that has led them to all their problems as well. So it's kind of like a nasty ripple effect. Can you touch on some aspects of uh, first, where you made progress in managing those micro stresses, and second, where you're still feeling like there's a lot of friction and you're having trouble resolving?
Sure. So, so when I was introduced to you, and you gave me those lessons on stress, and how, and the the negative side of stress, which is the hormonal effects of it, and the body's that, well, one is that constant levels of stress is not how our bodies were designed to cope with or whatnot. And so, us modern humans are put into environments which are just creating stress from all angles. And what you said to me made a lot of sense, which was if a person's enduring all this stress and whatnot, they're not going to be able to maintain a healthy, optimally healthy life, right? So at the time I was working with you, I was so in my life at that time, I had two sources of stress. One was my job, and the other one was my living situation. I had been renting a room in a friend's house, and it was just not pleasant for me to live there. So I have a job that was making me miserable, and I didn't quite like it. But then I would go home and have to not even want to go to my bedroom. And it was like there was nowhere I could go that I was actually looking forward to go. So the easiest one to fix was my living situation. And hearing from you about how, if there's a source of problems in your life, to examine it and change it, because we need to change it in order to put our health first. So actually that was like a good impetus for me to move out of that situation. And then I moved somewhere else. I was a roommate again with somebody else, and they had been going okay for a while. And then he moved his boyfriend in our 2-bedroom apartment, and I became like this third wheel and was like very uncomfortable. And so it was even worse than the situation. My living situation was worse than it was like the first time. And so again, I'm like, why? I don't need to live like this. I don't need to go to my house and just be made miserable by two people who are oblivious to me. Or I don't know. I'm not going to go into that. But so it was only a month of that when I realized like it was what it was, and luckily I wasn't on the lease. So you and my psychiatrist were like, well, like, you didn't address this particular thing, but this is your general approach to life, was if you have stress, get out of it. And my psychiatrist was also like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I guess I need to move. And he's like, when are you going to move? And I was like, I don't know, maybe 2 months or so, I'm going to, and he's like, okay, so you're just making excuses again. And I was like, oh, you know what? I think I am. So like that week I signed a lease and I moved out of that apartment. And so last month I've been living on my own, and it's been great. So that portion of stress was, I think, for me, easier to solve. My work stress has been steadily escalating over the years, and I'm a computer programmer at heart. I really don't like dealing with human beings, particularly at work. And so I just rather get instructions and just do the job. But there's pros and cons to everything. So the con of me being so smart is that I'm smarter than the people around me. So of course I get promoted into the position that I'm not well suited for, which is the IT manager. And I'm working for a small company. So what that means is resources are not unlimited. So when I recommend people to hire or whatnot, I am faced with this like really small budget for hiring somebody. So when someone does get hired, they're at the lower end of the experience or skill ladder.
Sorry
And
to-
so I can't delegate. I can't delegate things and have faith that it's going to work out. So now I have all the tasks that I was doing before I got promoted, and then the responsibilities of things to get done, but no one to delegate out the work to. And it's a small company, so like I'm doing things like fixing someone's computer mouse cable to figuring out why an API isn't working on a programming interface. And make sure I read 300 emails a day, which actually I don't do at all. But it's just like it was like what is it, whatever that analogy is, or the metaphor of the 1,000 paper cuts. Like that's been like the stress load I've been under. So I did threaten to quit my job. I told them I was like I was going to quit. I'm not coming back. I've had it. Like I asked for these resources for so long, and like you rejected every single candidate I've had, and so I was like, that's it. I can't take no more. And then I'm like, okay, we'll hire the people that you want, and they did that. But even then, they still ended up hiring people that really weren't exactly what I wanted. So anyhow. I thought my threat to quit the job would have helped with the job stress and whatnot, and it did for a little bit because they did like go along. Actually, everything I complained to them about was all vindicated. They finally like understood all the things that I said that were lacking. But I don't know. So yeah. So the job stress really got bad in summer, and it's been since summer since I worked out actually, and it's also been since summer that my diet has kind of gone off the rails up until maybe about a month ago when I got back on it. I know when I say the word diet, what I just mean is the food choices, because I know that with my own physiology from someone that went through weight loss surgery, that the weight gain seems to be more accelerated than other people's, and I found that to be like my own experience in the latter half of this year. So I'm like, okay, I have to like go back to the right choices for eating food. So no processed food. Make sure I'm eating the organic food, whole ingredient food, all that. But even still, like, well, the one good thing that came out of all that from work is I do have a little bit more control over my schedule now. So now I have the ability to get back into the gym during lunch. I just haven't done it for the first time yet. And I know after I do it for the first time, then I'll do it. But I just haven't like motivated myself to just do that first time again. So I think once I actually get back into the gym and move more and whatnot, because I just been so like lethargic from the stress and then maybe not the working out. So that just like kind of compounds, I think, the malaise. So I need to change my actions and not snap out of it, because it's not like so anyway, I just need to. Well, my psychiatrist, he's like, you're just making excuses. So I need to stop making excuses. Is a shorthand to say that I got to just push myself a little bit more, get myself back into the gym and back onto the routine that was like so successful.
Yeah, and you touched on like so many important topics that a lot of people, honestly, probably like 9 out of 10 people you run into these days struggle with. And one of the biggest ones I found that makes a program tough to sustain, not so much like a program tough to sustain, but moreover to prioritize your mental and physical health first, is that accumulation and overabundance of micro stresses, which a lot of people kind of like for the most part like normalized in their life because it's so abundant around us. You think it's just like first of all, there's no way around it, and second of all, it's just normal, you know. Uh, but what Vince is saying for listeners here is basically kind of like the central nervous system has a very tough time with dealing with a lot of things that you view as like, okay, they're kind of stressful, but not really. Like, for example, like sitting in traffic or having a lot of emails to answer or annoying coworkers or maybe an over pushy boss or too many deadlines, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, at the back of your head, you're probably like, well, you know, at least I'm not getting like chased by a lion, you know what I mean? Or something of that sort. And that's true. Obviously being chased by a lion is super stressful, but especially if you read a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert Sapolsky, you get a general overview of how the central nervous system ideally has evolved to function. And you'll see that it's evolved to function like basically you have like a peak stress, getting chased by a lion, for example. And then you have a scuffle. And then you have like valleys of literally like nothing going on, you know, like you're hanging like hunter-gatherers would be hanging out in the forest, fishing, hanging out with their friends, maybe doing like 3 hours of work a day, repairing tools or building tools or processing meat, fishing, etc. Basically what you would be doing on vacation these days, you know. They do in like blocks of multiple months. And then there's another, you know, stressful period. Like they got to go on another hunt or something of that sort, and maybe one of the tribesmen get injured, etc. But then once again, valleys of nothing going on. But unfortunately, today you got like literally you're on full blast for the most part of micro stresses. You know, you got to get up. You're probably not well rested to begin with. Get a sip of coffee, which spikes your cortisol. Get into traffic, which spikes your cortisol again, because a lot of people don't know, but it takes a lot of attention and focus to actually drive a car, because you got to stay in the lanes. All these cars are moving in and out. Someone's honking on you here, you know, someone's cutting you off here, especially in major cities like LA. That happens often, etc. You get to work, you got like one deadline after another. There's always one freaking annoying coworker that you got to deal with, no matter how dream scenario your job is. That kind of wears on you because you deal with that for like 8-10 hours a day. Maybe not. You might have a shitty boss, maybe not, you know what I mean? Crazy deadlines, crazy work schedules, a lot of annoying paperwork. I know IT can be bothersome because oftentimes problems are so like kind of random, you know what I mean? Like you're constantly kind of putting out fires, which is kind of tough to manage, especially in like your situation. Like you mentioned, you might not have like a huge team with you. So you got to be like even fixing like the damn mouse or showing like an employee how to use the wireless mouse, you know, on top of fixing the bigger picture stuff as well, which could be more pressing. And then sometimes, you know, you return back to the home environment. There's a lot of stresses there too. You know, oftentimes you're maybe in relationships you don't want to be in anymore. So you're kind of constantly having to wear all these masks. And that's kind of stressful to be basically fake to yourself at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Being an actor all day is very stressful, where actually just being your genuine self is not energy draining at all. You know, it's much more energy economical than having to put on like multiple facades, pretend you want to be talking to people, certain people when you don't want to be. Like you mentioned, you're an IT guy, you know, you don't want to be like playing politics and socializing. And I hear this from computer science guys all the time. They're like, oh man, I just wish like people would just let me code, like I'm getting paid for, you know? And that is true. That is like what you're getting paid for, to code, not to be like this guy's lunch buddy or have these group meetings every other second, which interrupt the flow of like the coding process, et cetera, not to be dealing with this like office politics between these two coworkers and now you have to solve it, et cetera. That could be draining, you know, if you don't want to be dealing with that. I don't think pretty much the majority of people want to be dealing with that, et cetera. So you guys, what Vince is saying is like super important and often overlooked and normalized. And one thing I would recommend that you guys could do, which is helpful, is especially it's the weekend, literally like draw out a circle. Like watch, I'll do it right here. I'm gonna let you take over in a second, Vince. But basically draw out a circle and then stress load, right? You write stress load and then just write out all the things, literally all the things that are stressing you out and all the arrows adding there. Okay. And this should also be like an external environment. But remember, you also have to, yeah, you also have to attend to your internal environment, you know, like even things like having like a um, very annoying internal critic could be very stressful, you know, or like some kind of fantasy self you're kind of comparing yourself to constantly. Like there's the gap of like, oh, I'm not good enough on my fantasy self, etc. And I'm lagging. There's a gap there. Or just things of the various sorts, you know, like anger issues, which are kind of symptoms of all that. But like, you want to address those too, because at the end of the day, all those add up to that stress load. And the one problem is, unlike your external environment, which I would recommend highly attending to and customizing to yourself too, your internal environment is very important, because wherever you go, there you are, you know? So if you don't solve the problems you yourself are creating or creating for yourself, then no matter if you go to an ideal environment, you'll just tend to recreate these problems, whatever they may be and however they may take form in your particular life. Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I would say. So, you know, luckily, so since my drug recovery began in 2018 up and through now, um, I try to be, to not be in denial, I think, about like where my strengths and weaknesses are or whatnot. So I know I am a procrastinator, and you know, I don't have a therapist right now, so my psychiatrist is doing double duty. But he's like, you know, when you anything that you've been talking to me about, when procrastination is involved, he's like, do you realize that those are the things that have been making you anxious and is increasing your stress and making you unable to do the things that you say are your goals and whatnot. And even though I knew that I've always been a procrastinator, I didn't quite ever understand it in that kind of like cause and cause and effect, such a tightly connected concept. So I am beginning to learn like the things that I procrastinate on doing are the things that are like adding up in the back of my mind of just making me be preoccupied with knowing what I'm not accomplishing and making me less capable of handling other things in like a calm, rational way. So, so I know that my own procrastination is not doing me any good. I don't know what benefit I get out of procrastinating, other than I guess maybe I'm thinking like the problem will go away if I wait long enough. But I find that that doesn't really work that well for me. So I have to be very aware of when I'm procrastinating on something, to light the fire under myself to do it. So I know like one key thing I was not doing was reading my mail that would come in, you know, through the post office. And you know, I've been moving like every year now, it seems. So my last move, I had mail that was just building up for a year and a half. And I didn't throw anything away. I had like, it took up a complete drawer in my dresser of just all this mail. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go through every single one of these things today. And I'm going to make sure that I don't ever let this mail accumulate again. And it's such like, you know, in the grand scheme of things, the mail is probably 95% garbage, and you know, 4% bills that you already know what you owe, and then, you know, maybe 1% of something is actually something you need to take note of or whatnot. And you know, that was the case in what I had. But I went through all of the mail. I found a few substantial like settlements that were sent to me that I didn't even know were coming my way. I was like, oh wow, like I could use that money, you know, too bad it was just sitting in this envelope that I never opened for 6 months. But anyway, so now it's been a few months. I've not let my mail accumulate. So like that's one thing I don't have to be weighing on me, of like a whole entire drawer of things that is just becoming increasingly more difficult to go through. And that's like one little less thing. And I try to do that at work as much as I can, but I do also realize what my limitations are. And, you know, I'm not Superman. I can't do 7 things simultaneously. So I have to know what my limitations are, and I have to be content with them. But then I also have to make sure that whatever those limitations are, as far as how they intersect with the job, that I let the people that they'll be impacting, I just need to let them know. Like, I know, like, when I am, for whatever reason, like, not going to make a deadline for a customer, that I just can't, like, wait till the deadline gets passed and then I have egg on my face. Like, for me, it's like, okay, so let's say I can't get to it, but I need to let people know. So, and then when I let people know, then they could do something that would actually help me to do it, because no one wants it. Our company is very good. Like, we don't want to see each other fail. That's how small the company is. And I know if I were just to speak up, I would probably get the help that I want. And instead, I even procrastinate about that stuff too, and none of it serves me well. And it would go a long way toward making the situation at work, I think, go better if I were just more communicative. But then again, that goes back to what I said. Like, I just rather have my head down and type. But that's not the world I live in. So I have to know I have to understand how I cause my own problems, understand what my limitations are, and knowing that typically if I communicate to people, that will tend to be to my benefit, and then my stress will go down. So, and I know that, and still I don't do it. So I don't know. That's why we're people, and that's why we're coming to you, Eugene.
Well, I found from my observation too, and I do this in many different ways as well. Like, people often use excuses as a form of escape, because it's oftentimes for certain challenges, especially it could be challenges in the workplace, it's kind of tough to come up with a solution. So to kind of dissociate from that and just at least buy some time, even if it's temporary, they come up with an excuse, like for fitness stuff, like, oh, I'm too busy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the time, because it's easy to come up with an excuse, and it quickly just dissolves you of responsibility of coming up with a solution, which might actually be challenging, although it might actually be very beneficial for you. And you hear this often, and then, unfortunately, just most often, like you've kind of hinted at here, just doesn't benefit the person in any way. And then also just actually ironically increases their stress, because then you have an unresolved issue that's kind of been pushed in the closet or something, but not actually dissipated, you know what I mean? Not actually resolved. So it's still there, but as it always goes, your body's constantly giving you signals and cries for help, and in the beginning, they're always very, they're not that loud. I don't know the right word for it. They're just not that loud in the beginning, but if you keep ignoring it, it kind of gets louder and louder. And then eventually it's going to be so loud, you're just going to have to deal with it. And most oftentimes that part is just some kind of life crisis,
Yeah.
like some serious health collapse, or some serious issue financially or at work, or stuff of that sort. But regarding IT work, I mean, it is a common theme. I've probably trained 1 or 2 people that seem like they landed a good job where it's like just very mellow and not a big deal. But they also happen to be mellow type personalities as well, which goes into that external plus internal environment combination, and how they need to be working in tandem with one another. But do you find that's like a common theme in IT? Like, it's just like an overly taxing and stressful occupation?
Well, I think it depends on the organization, the organizational maturity of your team. So I've always worked for small companies. It's always been like informal team structure. So it's been very ad hoc approach to things, and basically attending to the loudest voice, or the hottest fire. I know there's things that could be put into place, but I don't have experience using them so well. So that's like a training thing for me. But I know there's management methods that are designed to put things into very stable and calm way. And I have buy-in from my bosses to, like, well, I only have like two bosses up above me, but I have buy-in from my upper management to do whatever needs to get done in order to bring order to chaos. So like in my environment, it's not so much as if the job is designed against me, like setting me up to fail. It's just that I think sometimes, like, so I know through my drug years, the 18 years of it, I suffered very well. Like I was able to, I mean, I didn't manage it very well, but I was able to keep a job that whole time. I was able to get by with devoting all my money to drugs and my rent. I was able to have like the bare minimum subsistence or whatever, but in an in very horrible. Everything about my life, A to Z, was just horrible, but I just muddled through. And so it's kind of similar to what Romeo said here in the comment about sort of like the survivalist mindset. So like I know I've lived through putting myself through misery for so long, but just accepting it. So now I feel like the challenge I need to do is to not allow myself to be in that situation, right? So if there's something that I could do to make things better, then the struggle is to get out of the complacency of the problem and go into the risk taking or in some way, maybe a painful growth experience in order to address things that are not working well. And for me, I think one, maybe like my lack of experience in certain things holds me back from taking these risks, or two, it's fear of the unknown. And then three, I guess sometimes I just say, oh my God, I'm under so many other things that I can't make time to like incorporate this entire new thing. And so I think that third thing I said, the last one I said, is probably a form of excuse making, which is, I'm going to put all my focus into just managing this dysfunctional way of doing things, as opposed to working toward, getting the training and doing the things that I actually do know will actually reverse the problems. And so, yeah, like, it's for me, it's interesting because I pretty much I feel like I have a good grasp on what my challenges are. The thing is, I feel like maybe I'm just held back from fear of the unknown a little bit, as well as maybe like I just kind of fall back into, again, this like this procrastination or this, I don't know, just excuse making. I hate to say like I'm making excuses, but I mean, if you want to just boil it down to it, I think that's what I'm doing. And it's not helping me a lot. So this entire year, like so from June onwards, I've been derailed from like what my fitness goals were, and what like my aesthetic goals were, because I've allowed my job to get to a place where I felt like I've lost control of my schedule, and that I wouldn't even be able to work out for an hour and a half without being bombarded by crisis. And so actually we did hire some more people, and I was able to get a lot of the crisis management off of me. So I feel like now I'm at a good point now where I could actually just get myself into the gym, if I could just get myself into the gym for the first time. So I don't know. I can keep going on about that.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover there, and I think what Vince is saying in between the lines is that and he's trying his best. It's just as some occupations and stuff, but that doesn't mean you don't need to try it at all. And I always say this, but you need to have the confidence to set healthy boundaries in your workplace, and that's so important because, I mean, look, regardless of your dreams and goals, there's so many ways to approach life. The constant is like, you really can't do anything if you lose your mental or physical health. Literally anything. I don't even care what your goal is, from being president of a company to just living in the wilderness or whatever, being the best computer programmer ever. Like, how are you going to do all that stuff when being like super depressed or having chronic, like clinical levels of anxiety, or maybe even like serious low back pain or stuff of that sort? all of a sudden it acts kind of like as a bottleneck to everything you're trying to
Yeah.
do. You can only do as you're mentally and physically healthy. And at the end of the day, as depressing as it sounds, and I don't mean this in a depressing way, it's like, dude, for the most part, like 99.9% of people like don't give a shit about you. And your company doesn't give a shit about you. Like if you leave, they'll find someone else in like literally 2 days, 3 days, you know? And what are you left with if you kind of sacrificed your mental and physical health to be able to sustain that job or those relationships? Like you're left with just a broken mind, broken body into your next project, you know? And the company basically forgets about you like 2 weeks later. They don't even know you existed. Not because they're bad people, but like you have to understand a lot of those people, they have kids, you know, plus all the deadlines of that work and their own issues and stuff of that sort. So at the end of the day, it's kind of like, dude, you have to remember, like, you have to, no matter what you do, put yourself first. You do if you want any partnership or any career to last long term. And don't get me wrong, you could, you know, put yourself second in a relationship, put yourself second in a job, and it could last long term, but you're going to be dead miserable the entire time. And eventually you're just going to make everyone miserable around you because that energy is just very contagious. So you have to first and foremost like identify, be very crystal clear on your core values, like we talked about many times and I covered many times on these lives. And then make sure when you do attend to something that that job reflects those core values closely. And if it doesn't, dude, trust me, and if it doesn't, and you're going to stick with it, you're going to be in a world of pain. And on top of that, the longer you stick with it, typically how the human mind works through cognitive dissonance is the more philosophies you start developing to justify to yourself to keep sticking with it. You know what I mean? And then there's also the money aspect. Then you get promoted, you make more, and that's also one of the things that could be tying you down, among many, et cetera, stuff of that sort. But guys, just, I mean this in the best way, but like nobody gives a fuck about you. You might have 1 or 2 people in your whole entire life that actually cares about you and genuinely is going to be there on your deathbed. And even if you have 1 or 2, you're lucky already, because many people don't even have those 1 or 2 as well. So just accept it for what it is and see it for the positive of like, dude, if no one gives a fuck about me, like, why am I trying to impress these people and go so out of my way and destroy my mental and physical health to impress these people that are most likely like not mentally or physically well themselves anyways? It's like, what's the point? Just guys, start putting your mental and physical health first. I would say in the New Year's, I mean, one of the biggest upgrades you could do is just start doing that. And I promise you, man, like it might take a while, but you'll just be so much happier in your life once you do that. And I struggled with that too. Like I've told you many times on this live as well. I was never in IT or never had a corporate job or stuff of that sort. But I did find myself at one point training 6 days a week in person, you know, like 8 to 10, sometimes even 12 sessions a day for various reasons. One of the reasons, of course, I got like money hungry. The other reason is I didn't want to turn away clients because I knew I could genuinely help them. And I feel like a lot of times they may have not gotten that help from someone else. And I really just wanted them to succeed. But at the end of the day, I was just sacrificing my core values because I didn't have, like you mentioned, I didn't have that 1.5 hours midday to work out. I felt like always rushed. Like I got to get to the gym, boom, 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 work out really quick, which increases your chances of injury too when you're that rushed. Then, you know, quickly eat a meal before my next appointment comes in. And that was causing a lot of anxiety. And after like a few years of doing that, I just wasn't feeling that well. And I also had, you know, a circle of type A friends that are all working like 50, 60, 70-hour weeks sometimes. And I just thought that was like the thing to do, the adult thing to do, you know? And I wasn't thinking for myself, and I'll never make this mistake ever again in my life. But then at one point I looked around and I'm like, dude, like everyone's just very overweight that's doing that, very haggard and tired. They look many, many years older than they actually are. A lot of them are on prescription drugs A through Z, you know? And it's like, dude, what's the point? Like, it's not working for them. It's not working for me. I'm just going to try something new. And like a lot of people on this call, you might be in this situation too. Like I didn't have kids, you know, and I didn't have kids, and I looked over my expenses because really like to do is just work out and read books and maybe travel on occasions. And I'm like, dude, that's not that expensive. How much money do I really need on a monthly basis to live my dream life? And I calculated it's like pretty low. It's like $2,700 or something like that. And that's like sourcing the highest quality organic food, stuff of that sort. I luckily didn't have a car payment, so I had a paid off car too. So that kind of helped as well. But if you look over your expenses and you really take out the non-essential bullshit you keep spending money on, which the average American spends about $8,000 to $16,000 on per year, and I challenge you guys on this call, like look over your expenses this weekend and be honest with yourself and look over like every single dollar you spend, and you will see like 90% of that $8,000 to $16,000 a year is just like sugar highs at best. You buy it, it gives you a sugar high, you forget that you even had it, and then the money's gone. You know what I mean? And if you look over that and look over your expenses, you will see like, hey, you know, maybe I could quit my job for a while, or maybe I could take a lower position to give me some breathing room so I can kind of think clearly and start seeing what I really want in my life and then kind of go for that. And it might be a little tough, but hey, staying in a position you don't want to be in is extremely hard as well.
Yep.
So don't discount that. Oh, it's familiar. That doesn't mean it's healthy and right for you. And it's definitely not easy, especially if what I'm saying right now is somehow hitting a chord inside of you. You've already thought about it yourself many times over. And guys, please just stop plugging yourself into this machine unconsciously and kind of sacrificing your mental and physical health because you feel like that's the adult you do. I mean, if that's really what you want to genuinely do, then go for it, you know? But there's also healthy ways of expressing that desire to do that. You don't have to kill yourself while pursuing whatever you're trying to pursue. There are better ways of doing it for you. And remember, like if you're miserable in a mess, like people around you that you actually love are going to be miserable in a mess too, because that's going to reflect on them. And the same with parents. I said, oh, I didn't have kids and I was able to do that. But look, your kids learn like 80% of what they learn from is just by observing you. So if they see, for the parents on here, if they see you killing yourself, eating shitty food, being addicted to medical drugs, you know, it's not medicine, they're drugs, they're going to see that as appropriate behavior for themselves. And guess what? They're going to end up the same way. And if you're not happy, like, what do you think is going to happen to them? Same exact thing, you know? So you're responsible for mirroring those healthy mental and behavioral patterns to your kids so they can actually be healthy as well.
The best thing about not having kids, but then having brothers who do have kids, is that you get to tell your brothers how they're ruining their kids, and they don't like it too much.
Yeah.
I'm like, you've ruined your kid. I'm like, you are such a bad example. And I tell the other brother who has so many kids, I'm like, you are ruining your kids. Like they're totally following after you, and you. And they're like, you don't even have kids. Be quiet. But I was like, if I had a kid, he'd be perfect. So, you know, we always think it's somebody else.
And it's harsh, Vince. It's harsh what you say, but it's so true, you know? And I see this with parents all the time. And ironically, you see overweight parents or drugged up parents, and their kids are the same way. So there you go. So are their pets, ironically, you know? Even their pets follow in their path as well. And it's totally true. And as a parent, your kid didn't ask you to be here. You brought them here. So it's your responsibility to first get your shit together and then communicate to your kid how they could live a life that's healthy mentally and physically, you know, because you see that it's very rare to see like a truly mentally and physically healthy person today in America. Like I quoted some numbers before, 9 out of 10 American adults right now are metabolically unhealthy. And I mean, step outside literally anywhere in America, and like literally 9 out of 10 people you see are just full of obesity and disease and a lot of mental and physical pain. And they've completely normalized it. It's like a lot of them don't even try to resolve it in any way. They're just like, this is just, and I hear this all the time and it really drives me crazy. This is how it is, you know?
Right.
This is how it is, and you have to deal with it. And that's not true, guys. Just look at me as an example, okay? I was able to successfully disconnect from that system of pathology. It took years and a lot of courage and stuff. And I'm not even that courageous of a person, but I knew that I didn't want to live that way. And you guys can find out an answer that suits you too, you know? Um, so that's my little rant. I don't know if you have any input on that. I don't mean to take over, Vince.
But no, that's fine. No, I mean, I think we're saying it's very similar things, so I agree with all that.
Yeah. So let me take over my look over my notes here. So, yeah. So that's kind of the stuff I wanted to. Have you ever? Are you working remote now at all? Did you give that a try or?
I do about half a week remote, half a week in the office. I like that mix. I wouldn't do well working at home all the time, especially when I have a little bit of anxiety. If I'm having like an anxious day or I wake up anxious, I'll go to the office because then I don't know, I seem to work better actually in the office, but it is nice to work from home as well. So I like that flexibility. I guess there's one thing I would say, especially for like, well, so I'm gay, so all my friends are basically gay guys, and I spent 18 years in a drug underworld, and I would say that you know a lot. I don't necessarily regard myself in this way, but a lot of my friends did, which was that. Um, a lot of their problems in adulthood stem from psychological responses to perhaps some of the adversity they might have faced when they were younger, either from their family or their communities. And so there's a lot of attribution of unhealthy habits as an adult. They go back to that. But I don't think that was my route, but obviously I fell into a drug addiction anyway. But I think what I see around me though is just a lack of. So this is just my observations, but it's just a lack of then trying to, I don't know, like prioritize a healthful living style now in the present. And I don't know why that would be. Maybe it's because of we don't have a lot of things that we're responsible for. Like, this is my own personal opinion, but I feel like we don't generally we don't have children. At most, we have a partner maybe, or like a pet that are dependent upon us. But other than that, like our lives are ours, and there's not much that we have to divert our resources to, other than just the resources are all in ourselves. So I feel like there's just a little bit of freedom or whatnot to that we could sort of just indulge in maybe like a stuck mentality and not try to grow. And I see that really more on the mental side than like say the physical side of things. But like I said, I got into drugs and I stayed like that for 18 years. And a lot of the reason why was because I didn't have anyone that was dependent on me. And actually one of the things that me and my friends would comment on was like, God, could you imagine if we had this addiction and actually had like people that relied upon us? Like, that would be a fucking way worse disaster than just destroying our own lives. So we were kind of happy about that. So in a way, it almost like enabled our addictions. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's like, but like, I think what I see is maybe even just a lack of even knowing that there are things that can help our mental health that that would be available to us. So luckily for me, I had a 12-step program. I'm really convinced that if I did not have my addiction and my recovery, that I would not be as self-aware as I am now, and I would not be humbled as I have been, and I would not want to help other people. And my concern for my health is definitely a consequence of the way that I wrecked it in the past. And so like just kind of going through those lows motivates me to improve on all those things. And I would feel like taking a holistic approach to health might help us deal with like the past things that have had a negative impact in our lives, and maybe help us heal from that. I don't know. It's just like this kind of just observational thing that I have. It's not necessarily anything that might even be true, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that have different opinions or different experiences, and have other. Maybe their first circle of friends are different than mine, but I don't know. I feel like the human experience is all about is about ourselves internally, and then the way that we interact with people, and the way that we go about conducting our business with other people. So luckily, as a consequence of all the ways that I was not living very well, I learned the importance of doing the best I can for myself, not allow myself to live in misery, trying to avoid things that will lead me back to my addiction, and also treating people with respect and kindness, and also protecting myself to not be like a doormat or whatnot. So it's a very complex set of relations that my work has definitely put me into this negative feedback loop, and I know to take the hard work to get out of a situation does take a lot of work, and it could be difficult, but it does lead to a positive feedback loop, I feel like. So I don't know. I'm kind of very grateful about my experiences through life, even though it had me stuck for 20 years, but I wouldn't be where I'm at today, certainly. I don't think, if I had not gone through all that. So I don't know. That's all I would say.
Well, what would you say? I run into this problem often, and it seems like the worse off the person is, the less likely they are to do a coaching program. I always get the people oftentimes the people that are easiest to kind of get on coaching programs are the ones that need it the least, because they're already obviously more health conscious, and they're more open to doing that. Sometimes I'll get there have been a few times, man, where you get a call the person's 300 pounds overweight, and they can't even walk on one of their feet because it's so swollen, and the doctors is dude, you got 2 to 3 years left max, and if you don't change your ways, you're pretty much like a goner. And they get on these assessments. I always offer that free assessment, just so we can get to know each other and see what you're even trying to do, if we're even a good match. And then at the end of the call, they're like, oh, I'll think about it and stuff of that sort. And I'm like, dude, what is there to think about? You have no more time to think, especially if you're 40, 50. I mean, look, the average person dies at 76 last time I checked in the US. Really, for the most part, their spirit dies at 25, but their physical body dies at 76. And I'm dude, if you're 50 years old, if you're 40 years old, I mean, I don't know the exact percentage, but your life's pretty much 50% over, how much longer is you going to put it off? Are you going to wait until Jupiter aligns with all its moons and the whole entire solar system before you finally take action and stuff of that sort? But what would you say to people that are clearly hurting, but just still so addicted to their pathology, and it's so sad to see?
So I would say a few things. So I think one is always okay. I took that evaluation, that chart, and I think my numbers were, if I recall, my graph was pretty good, except there were some spikes actually in anxiety, which I guess doesn't surprise me, and maybe something about sleep. But other than that, I think my physical numbers are pretty good. But that's when I knew, because so I had known what wasn't working for me were the things that were working for me. So I knew there had to be a reason why I could not get really below 220. There had to be a reason. So whatever it was that I thought I was doing right, it wasn't right. Now, I didn't know what to do about it because I didn't know. And so I saw your videos, and I was like, I'm like, that makes so much sense, because those are the things I'm not doing. So one is I would say that somebody has to have a real honest talk with themselves and recognize, one, are you ready to make changes in your life? Because the things you had been doing obviously have led to where you are now. So you need to have an honest thing about, you have to be realistic also. Like you cannot get somewhere else by doing the same things. So
Mhm.
if you want to reverse your trajectory and live a healthier life and have a better outcome and all that stuff, then you have to be willing to make the changes that result in that outcome. So you have to know, like you cannot just continue doing the status quo and expect a totally different outcome than the one that got you to where you are at today. And that takes a lot of courage, I think, to get one out of such a complacent attitude. And then also you need to be open-minded to hearing things that you may not have ever heard before, or things that maybe you are skeptical about, because maybe you were hearing the same things, but from people that you didn't give much credibility to. Because I will tell you, I didn't really put much regard into like organic food and all of those things either, because I think the places that I was hearing it from were people who I considered to be just, I don't know, I couldn't relate to them. Like, I would, like just say like a guru type person. I can't relate to that kind of person. That's not part of my life. Or like maybe like, a California celebrity. Well, I can't relate to their life. And of course they could do what they want because they're a celebrity and they don't have any sort of restrictions on things. But to hearing it from you as, I knew people that had been working for you and I saw the results. So I was very eager to be persuaded by whatever it was that you were going to say. So despite the fact that you were saying many of the similar things that I heard from people I was extremely skeptical of, I was open-minded enough to realize that perhaps what you're saying would work for me, because you're saying it in a way that's actually directly related to what my goals are. And you're the things that you were saying were to help someone that was in my situation where I had reached this point in my fitness where nothing seemed to be making any more positive growth, and I knew that there were deficiencies in what I was doing. So there's that. Also, I would say, another thing was like, anyone doing browsing of a fitness provider or whatnot, you're always going to see their own clients like before and after whatnot. But I had known through my interactions on Facebook and whatnot, people that actually had worked for you and what their outcomes were. So seeing how your program had affected the lives of people that I like knew in person. I mean, these people that I was communicating with, and also just knowing from my own trials in my life that open-mindedness is very positive for me, because there are a lot of the ways I was living where I had to be persuaded that I had to reverse course totally. And so that sort of change wasn't exactly foreign to me at that point. So, change was actually what I was looking for. But yeah, so like, I would say like a person has to be very introspective, has to be ready to commit to changing things. And also I had faith that actually what you were saying were things that were going to directly make an immediate impact to what I was doing. I think I had like originally reached out to you in May. I think it was to like a wrong email address. And all through June, I was like, oh my God, like I'm so eager like to work with this guy because of how well you were doing with Breton. And I was like so impatient and whatnot. And I was like, he hasn't emailed me yet. I'm like, maybe he's busy. But
Or
I
maybe,
was like, I was so eager to make a change.
huh? Or maybe I just don't check like you. I don't like reading emails either. So
Yeah. Yeah. So I sent you an IM and that got the instant result.
yeah, wants to really reach me, text or call me if it's that important.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I was persistent, and I was ready to change. I was eager to change. I was like hungry for it. And something like this, if anything could help you incrementally conquer certain areas of your life that can use improvement, then I guess it can't hurt. But really, like I was so determined and disciplined to take into account everything you were saying to me, and I did it, and like it instantly reversed course on everything that I wanted that to happen to. And I was like, gosh, like, fuck, like if I was only eating like this years ago, whatever. But I mean, it's what it is. It's like I feel like the information that you have is so like impactful, especially for I wanted the fat loss thing, and it worked so rapidly, and I was eating all the food I wanted to eat. I wanted to eat the right food, and I did like watch every podcast that you had been publishing, and that you were a guest on like so many other things when you were after you had authored that book, the anti-factory farm eating guide or something, shopping guide. I listened to so many of those things that I feel like I could actually impersonate you and give it myself. Because just like I just
Vince, do these lives for me and help save me a little bit of time. You're like, hey, this is Eugene.
Yeah.
You know,
screw my beard out and dye my hair. Well, whatever. Yeah.
You can probably grow a beard in like a week. I
don't know why you even said that. I just trimmed it yesterday, but yeah. So yeah, like so. I would say the best thing that I did was sign up with Eugene last year. He gave me the information that I needed and that I didn't have at the time, and that I didn't quite know was the information that I wanted, but I did know that the information was an answer to the things that I knew weren't working for me. And I'm eager to work with you again in 2023.
Yeah, and to bring up Vince's point, he touched on a lot of this. I'm just going to summarize it quickly. But in 2023, yes, you can't come up with a solution with the same belief system that led to the problem. So keep that in mind. That's so important, and a lot of times you just need a third party to look at you from the outside in, you know what I mean? Because oftentimes you don't know what you don't know, and a lot of people can bring fresh and new perspectives. And sometimes, when you do hire people, they do. I've had sucky mentors, that I've wasted money on for sure. But it's just the risk you're going to have to take to eventually find someone that does work for you. Another option you have is you could definitely do it on your own. I'm a huge advocate of being your own mechanic, but just know, like, you got to really devote serious time to it. Like, start with reading 2 to 3 books a month, every single month, on the topic you're trying to improve in. Then take at least like 2 to 3 courses a year. Like Vince took the 12-step program. He didn't just do it himself. That would be considered like a course, for example. Then eventually you're probably, if you're that invested on it, you'll realize that you do need a mentor eventually to help fast track the process for you, because there's no way that you're going to find someone that's so good and has been doing it for 15 or 20 years, and you're going to know everything they're going to know in 1 year of hardcore studying, even if you do devote 20, 30 hours a week, every single week, all year round to that topic. There's just no way you're going to catch up to that person. I mean, you could in 15 or 20 years, which is what they invested in, but just know that that's the process you have to go. Don't think you're just going to be cruising around YouTube and trying to find some random stuff for free or on a podcast or be able to piece it all together and all of a sudden succeed out of nothing. That's just not how it works. It might produce some short-term results for you here and there, but you're just not going to get any long-term or impressive resolutions like whatsoever and stuff of that sort. So, but Vince, thank you. Is there anything else you would like to cover? I'm happy to kind of expand on any other ideas.
No, I'm good. Actually, the time went by so quickly. I didn't even realize how, we went to an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's how, well, it's already been 12 months of the year.
Yeah.
How about that for time flying?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, to anyone out there though, I'll just say, Eugene was great to work with me during our program time, and there was a once a week call that he has, and the call would come and he'd be like, "What are your questions?" And I'd be like, "Well, dude, like I listened to like 4 of your podcasts last week, and um, if I did have a question, I'd just be like, "Well, what did he say in those podcasts?" So I never had anything really to tell him. So like our calls were so short. I was like, "Oh, gee, I wonder if I'm shortchanging myself." But but when I did say things, you know, Eugene was he's a good listener. But you know, it's not like as if anyone you hire to help you is going to be like a taskmaster and tell you what to do. It takes a lot of one's own like surrendering and giving up of those old ways of doing things and being willing to make the changes. But you know, that's all up to us as individuals. You know, so.
Well, I do have actually one question for you, Vince, before we close it out. Were you skeptical about doing like remote coaching at all versus like, because I know so many people are still stuck on the in-person model, but little do they realize it's like most of the most incompetent people typically stay with in-person training. There are some great ones, but then they're typically also charging like 200 to 300 bucks an hour, no problem, and typically requiring a huge down payment on the program. They're definitely not like 50 bucks an hour and stuff of that sort.
Okay, so at that point, I was not opposed to remote training. One was because I was already familiar with the gym, and two was while I knew I could kind of work out around lunchtime, I didn't know like the exact time on any one given day that I'd be able to do it. So for me, actually, it was easier to do a remote because then I wouldn't. Well, one, yeah, so you know, I wouldn't have to physically coordinate being at the same place at the same time with somebody. I could do these things on my own in my own schedule, which would actually be easier to do than to have to stick to a schedule in order to have somebody physically there, where all they're going to do is just watch you. um, so remote, I was kind of really interested in doing remote. Plus, like all of the in-person training that I ever had, they never gave me anything. Like I never like came away from that with structured documentation of anything really, or even what my weightlifting progress was, like to even know, like to remember like what my barbell weights were if I wanted to do something like, you know, 2 months from then, like, oh gee, I got to rediscover what all the weights are. But when I knew that your way of doing things included the self-evaluation, and then you did a physical evaluation to see where our body limitations were as far as our pain-free movements. And then part of your thing was was this like spreadsheet with so many tabs, all centered around a structured way of planning various aspects of my life. So one was like what my ideal week looks like as far as from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. Like, what does the week look like? You know, for me, luckily, it's very static and predictable. Also, you gave a good way of determining like what a day's meal will consist of by putting on there the preferred foods and you know, their nutritional value, and basically it was up to me to just do all the combinations I wanted to get the proper targets, and then also all the weightlifting routines, and then all the tracking things. So I was like, okay, so like the way that Eugene is giving me the stuff is way more organized, and I get to keep it than anyone I ever worked with in person. So like that alone, I think really was extremely helpful to me, and was actually more practical too. Because if you do get a personal trainer, I mean, I think really the most you're going to be able to get from them is an hour of their time once a week. And so like, what will you do the rest of the week? So the way that it worked with Eugene was all the fitness stuff was all planned out for every single day, and all the routines were programmed into the spreadsheet. So like that was way more direction than I ever got from anybody else. So I would say to anybody that I wouldn't be so hesitant to, I wouldn't be so dismissive of remote work or remote whatever as being effective. For me, it was way more effective than any in-person trainer I ever had.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
Yeah, and some like before we close it out, I mean, some things to look for. I've been doing this for 15 years, so trust me, this is like very, very accurate. Whatever you guys decide to do, if you want to hire like an in-person coach or an online coach, it's totally up to you. But just look for these things, just to know that they're actually competent and good at what they do. So first and foremost, I mean, upon first meeting you, just presuming you're very relatively healthy still, I mean, like the assessment process takes about 2 to 3 hours, no problem, upon first meeting you. So kind of keep that in mind. If you're like showing up and they're like, here, sign this waiver, and then let's get started, that's already like a huge red flag, and you should probably walk away, because there are two things going on there. Either the person is just very incompetent, or the person is kind of running more of a like a revolving door type of business where they just want to get you in, kind of coach you, get you out, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, some other red flags to consider are, they're on their phone during the training session with in-person coaches. You see that very often. Or they literally don't have a game plan. You show up and they ask you like what you want to do, like what do you want to train today? They don't keep notes, or maybe at best they jot something down in like a little teeny notebook. A good coach will give you like a structured, basically almost like a quarterly program or like a year program, breaking it down, like what are your goals for the week? What are your goals for the month? What are your goals for the quarter? What are you doing Monday through Sunday on every single week, ranging from your lifestyle, diet, and workout program, and working on a lot of aspects even outside of that. It's a lot to explain here, but just so you know, it's kind of like if you're showing up and they're just basically counting reps and spotting you, and basically like a rent-a-friend, they're just chatting with you excessively in between sets. I mean, you don't have a trainer in that case. You have literally, you're just paying like $50 to $100 an hour for a rent-a-friend to count your reps and to spot you. And in that case, it's way too expensive for that kind of service, I feel, and you're not gonna, I guarantee you're not gonna see that many results, probably any results. And another thing I would recommend looking for with a coach is make sure that they actually have like a large and long laundry list of successful clients, of very successful clients. It's not like they just have pictures of themselves being successful. Because there's one thing about being able to do it yourself, but there's another thing about being able to coach other people to do the same exact thing when they come from various different backgrounds, ethnicities, educational levels, starting places, et cetera, et cetera. So there's so many other things to look for, but those are just some big takeaways. I mean, if you go to their website or you go to their social media and they have so many followers or something of that sort, but it's just like they don't have, and their program supposedly is like the best program in the world, but they have very little to no testimonials to show for it. I mean, that's a huge red flag already, because if they're like an influencer and they're influencing people to change, why aren't they showing the people changing? So many other things, but it's just, and oftentimes you guys have to remember with in-person coaching, you don't have to have any credentials or certifications to be an in-person coach. Like look it up on Google right after this call if you don't believe me. If you want to call yourself an in-person personal trainer, just call yourself that. And that's it. There's no body enforcing that or anything of that sort. All you need is just fitness insurance, which is like $250 a year. And that's it. And you're like literally a personal trainer. And that's all that's required. I'm not even exaggerating. that is literally all that's required to be a personal trainer. So typically, what you get in that industry is a lot of just people coming into it for like a quick buck, or like fitness enthusiasts that are happen to be enthusiastic about the gym, but not actually know anything about physiology or psychology or nutrition or stuff of that sort. Trying to coach people and stuff of that sort. So just some things to look forward to and to be very careful of when going into 2023, because I don't want you guys spending your money recklessly and then obviously not getting any results or value out of it, and then presuming that it's either like your genetics or just coaching is bad. But in reality, it's just that type of coaching is bad, and it's definitely not your genetics. Even if you don't have the best genetics, maybe you won't be number one in the Mr. Olympia contest, but you can still have like a super amazing physique and also very great health and stuff of that sort, even if you don't have like ideal genetics. Don't let that hold you back. Okay, guys? All right. So thank you, Vince. It's honestly great to see you. I consider you like a friend first and foremost, you know, not just like a client. And it's always good to see your progress and maintaining it. I still got to get you your Enneagram results. I haven't forgotten. Put together the report, I promise. I just usually typically take like December off and half of November and just kind of do whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it's such great to see you. Damien just jumped in, another former client of mine. Richard, thanks for jumping in. I saw a bunch of people came and win as well. Romeo, good to keep in touch. Dennis, and wishing you guys the best this holiday season. I don't even know what any of you guys celebrate, but whatever. Just rest, okay? Don't do anything too crazy. Allow your body to rest. And remember, you guys, stop letting the world put you second, okay? Put yourself first, and trust me, life will be a lot easier for you, okay? All right, you guys, have a good one. And thanks.
Thanks, Eugene. Merry Christmas.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.